federal ban on abortion. And listen, this abortion discussion, this issue of which I am incredibly passionate about, as you guys know, I talk about abortion a lot on this channel. I am distinctively pro-life. I am an abolitionist. I don't believe that we need exceptions. I don't believe that some babies, depending on their age of gestation, should be allowed to live while others should be allowed to be murdered. I believe life begins at conception. That is my deeply held conviction, and I stand on that. But what I want to do is let me demystify the complexity of this issue here. The issue that, to me, is not complex at all. But if you understand how this country was designed to function, and if you understand how our Constitution is supposed to govern us, you would understand why Roe v. Wade was overturned and what are the implications for that, so that people keep trying to tell you that abortion has been outlawed and that it's just not true, and then listening to the lie that Donald Trump wants to implement a federal ban. Now, I would absolutely love there to be a ban on abortion, but we cannot misrepresent one, what Roe v. Wade, the overturning of Roe v. Wade was, and then two, what the president, who was already in office, has already said that he has no intention on doing. So let's just spend a little time and talk about Roe v. Wade, because I believe not a lot of us actually understand what Roe v. Wade was, the implications of that ruling, and then the overturning of that in the Dobbs decision. What does all of that mean for us? So let's demystify the complexity. Roe v. Wade was the 1973 Supreme Court case. It was a decision. And essentially all it did, well, not all it did, it was disastrous, but it legalized abortion nationwide in this country. Okay, well, we agree, we all agree, right? Well, during Trump's administration in 2022, as you all know, that decision was overturned. God's people, we celebrated. We were overjoyed by that. We knew that that was just the beginning, that it didn't mean what everybody was saying it meant, that, oh my gosh, there's no more abortion. No. All it did was, it was a Supreme Court decision that in the majority of opinion, they held that the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. What does that mean? Meaning, there's no provision in the language of our Constitution that gives a woman the right to murder an unborn person in the womb. Listen to my language. I am saying person because I am recognizing the personhood of the human in utero before they come out, right? So, thus the overturning of Roe, which allows each state, we have these 50 or 51 if you count Puerto Rico. I don't even know how that works anymore, but all of the United States together collectively, our constitutional republic, when Roe was overturned, it allowed each state to regulate or prohibit abortion as they see fit. Okay? Overturning Roe was the right thing to do constitutionally because it was a decision that is actually consistent with our Constitution. Let me go ahead and explain the reasoning, though, behind the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So, the first thing we do, we should always look at the Constitution. If we start there, this will make so much sense. The Dobbs decision, it emphasized that the right to abortion was never explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. I don't know about you, if you have a pocket Constitution. I normally have one here. I think it's in my purse. Sometime I walk around with it because you can never have too many pocket Constitutions. But if you were to actually read the Constitution, there is no provision that explicitly mentioned abortion within the Constitution and the original ruling in the Roe decision. It was based on an extremely broad interpretation of the due process clause of the 14th Amendment, right? So y'all might be asking, well, April, I don't know, right, what the 14th Amendment is. Like, I don't just walk around remembering amendments in my head. No problem. I'm a homeschooler mama, so let me break it down for you. The 14th Amendment protects certain rights that are not explicitly listed in the Constitution, but they are deemed fundamental to our personal liberty. And so in Roe v. Wade, the court reached the conclusion that the right to privacy included the right to abortion. That's what the decision that was reached in the case of Roe v. Wade. They somehow devised, I don't know how, that the right to murder, like on its face, such a conclusion should have never landed there, because in the case of an abortion, there's an issue of personhood, right? Like personhood, there's a person, the baby is a person in utero. No one is afforded privacy in murdering another image bearer, regardless of location. So, in Dobbs, 2022, the court held that the right to an abortion, it did not meet the historical or the legal criteria for being a constitutionally protected right. That's what the justices argued. They argued that the right to abortion does not have this deep historical precedent in American law or common law, and was not something considered fundamental, like it's your right, like liberty is your right, that the right to off another human in utero, that's not afforded to you as a fundamental right. Now, the lefticals, they keep lying and trying to assert that it is a constitutionally protected right, but they cannot prove it from the Constitution, and it's not a constitutionally protected right. But sadly, most leftists, no offense, they're just not that smart, okay? They're not that smart, and they have no respect for our Constitution. That's why they're trying to tear it down at all costs. They'll trample all over that document in order to try to make it say something that it does not say, in order to further their wickedness and their thirst for blood. That is just a fact. Now, number two, in the Dobbs decision, the majority embraced a proper view of the Constitution. What did they do? They took into consideration what was the original understanding of those who drafted and ratified it. They're like, okay, since abortion was not historically recognized as a constitutional right, the justices, they argued that Roe must have been a misinterpretation of the Constitution, right? Like not that I've taken constitutional law, but everyone agreed that this was the right thing to do if we were to be consistent with our governing our document that governs how this country runs. There's a point that I want to highlight. Justice Alito's opinion in the Dobbs decision pointed out that until the late 20th century, no court, no legislature in the United States had ever recognized abortion as a constitutional right. And the reason why is because in this case, many states had laws prohibiting or severely restricting abortion when the 14th Amendment was adopted in 1868. So what does this mean? This literally means that the court's decision to overturn Roe, it did what it was supposed to do. It did what it was supposed to do. It effectively returned the power to regulate or ban, whichever side of the aisle you want to be on. It returned that power back to the states. Rather than being a federally guaranteed right to murder, because y'all know I like using biblical language, rather than it being a federal guaranteed right to murder, the Dobbs ruling allows each state to determine its own abortion laws, ranging from a complete ban to unrestricted access, depending on state legislation. So the entire decision, it undergirds the principle of federalism, which is where certain powers are reserved for the federal government, other powers are reserved for the states. Lefticals love big government, and they love power, and they love control. That's why they want it at the federal level. But overturning Roe v. Wade was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do, so the crazy and deranged lefticals, right, in New York and California, if they want to murder babies, they can do so as freely as they want. But then in other states who respect the sanctity of life, they can say no. We don't play that mess here. We don't want to do that. Now, in my opinion, I am grateful for the overturning of Roe v. Wade. I would love a federal ban. However, to keep inconsistency with our Constitution, it belongs to the states. And then I can actively work at the state level with my state legislators, with my governor, to appeal to the personhood of the human in the womb and say, this is wrong. We need to put this to a vote to recognize personhood. Once we can get personhood, we can move on the path to full abolition. Now, the majority opinion in the 2022 Dobbs decision, it criticized Roe because the entire basis of that decision, it had a very weak constitutional reasoning behind it. And all critics have argued that Roe lacked a strong legal foundation. They argued that it was based on a subjective interpretation of the Constitution rather than an established legal principle. So, Dobbs versus Jackson, that ruling overturning Roe v. Wade, it was important because the Supreme Court held that abortion is not a constitutionally protected right. You don't have a federally protected right to murder, period. You don't. The Constitution of these here United States, it does not explicitly or implicitly guarantee the right to abortion, i.e. womb assassination, assassinating a defenseless image bearer in the womb, and therefore the decision about whether to regulate abortion or to allow abortion is left to individual states. This marked a significant shift toward a more consistent, originalist interpretation of the Constitution. And it was a decision I agreed with. I don't believe it is enough. Like I said, I am an abolitionist, but it was the right thing to do to allow states to reaffirm where do they stand on this issue, which means each state can go. You can go and lobby and encourage your state legislators to amend your state's constitution to either recognize the personhood of babies in the womb or to protect them, or they can go in the other direction and kill as many babies as they want. But the people in each state get to decide. Do not allow these lefticals to obfuscate the facts. So when I hear lefticals claim that Donald Trump wants to rip up the Constitution, that is insane. We actually had a candidate who actually did the right thing in actually reeling back some of the federal government over having their overreach and allowing our constitutional republic to function the way it was designed to function. But this is just one example of how Kamala continued to lie throughout that entire debate, trying to distance herself from the abysmal record of the administration that she's a part of and move the goalpost and the focus on something else, spending a lot of time focusing on promises that she knows she can't keep. But the question is, why would we believe that anything that she is saying that she wants to do or she doesn't want to do, the things that she's flipped-flopped on, why would we believe her now? We go from, I'm going to ban fracking to I'm not going to ban fracking. We go from, y'all come on in to I want to secure the border. We go from defund the police to now I'm the top cop, law and order. Like, nobody believes you, lady. The thing about it is the American people are being manipulated to believe whatever she believes we need to believe to have confidence in just electing her so that when she gets there, we'll be into full-blown communism. Like, that's essentially what's going to happen.